welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the Samjhota incident that happened 15 years ago, and yet the culprits of this incident, that traumatic, reprehensible, brutal incident that killed so many Pakistanis, remain are still scot-free. We haven't seen any justice being meted out from India. We want to talk about that. We also want to talk about the legality of things. Was justice done as far as the Indian courts are concerned? Was there a fair trial as far as these culprits were concerned? We want to talk about that. We also want to talk about overall, as far as India is concerned, and the kind of Hindutva movement we are seeing, the kind of extremism we're seeing in India overall, and the kind of cross-border situation that can develop, considering Modi's India at this time, considering extremism at its height, considering the treatment of minorities at this time, as far as not only Muslims are concerned, but also other minorities like Christians who are suffering, Sikhs who are suffering, Sikhs who are suffering. We've seen that kind of situation develop over time. We've seen the hijab incident, all of those things today on Perspective. I have with me Javed Jatoon, who's a senior analyst. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Mia Sanaullah, who is a former ambassador. Thank you for joining us today. And Dr. Salma Malik, who's a foreign affairs expert. Thank you for being with us. And Javed Sab, like I said, it's been 15 years. The Indian government continues to deny any kind of justice to the families of the victims at what happened as far as the Samjhota Express incident is concerned. It was a terrorist attack. There is a clear evidence. We've seen, across the board kind of brutality that incident itself, the kind of killings, the way the people were butchered, the way they were killed. In terms of what's happening at this time in India, how do you see this? Do you think that there will be, now 15 years down the road, what can we hope as a state, obviously, yes, because these were our people?
Thank you very much, Marukh. I think we have come a long way from Samjhota Express bombing. And we all know that it was done by the RSS and Sangh Parivar terrorists. First, the blame was put in Pakistan. Then eventually, the investigators even admitted that it was done by the extremists in India. And the blame was put on Pakistan. And down the road, as you mentioned, the 15 years is a very long time. And I think India has become more extremist, more fanatical, and Prime Minister Modi's government is being completely controlled by RSS and Sangh Parivar. I think there was some kind of a facade of secularism in India while Congress was in power, and even Prime Minister Vajpayee, when he was there, I think there was some kind of sanity, but I think sanity is gone from India. The minorities, especially Muslims, are being terrorized, and the recent incidents of hijab issue has been made a big issue in India. And the way the statements are emanating from the BJP government and the other extremist and fanatical Hindu organization, it seems that the space for the Muslims is being literally narrowed down, and they are being pushed against the wall. And probably the aim is to push the Muslims out of India as well. And there has been a talk among certain leaders of BJP, and Sangh Parivar is very vocal about that. Even a couple of days ago, some of the leaders of BJP mentioned that it is a Hindu state and Muslims will have to live like Hindus. But I think as far as Modi is concerned, why we should expect any leniency on part of Prime Minister Modi? Why Pakistan can't take the issue? I mean, definitely Pakistan is doing a lot, but I think much more needs to be done as far as highlighting the issue of the plight of the Muslims is concerned. As you mentioned in your intro, the Sikhs are not being spared, the Christians are not being spared, the Dalits are not being spared, and even the kind of independence or separatist movements which are ongoing movements in the northeastern states. What is happening there is also terrible. But the world at large, they are very silent as far as Modi's brutalities are concerned in India, mainland India, and in occupied Kashmir as well.
Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Mia Sanaullah. Ambassador, overall, the fact that, of course, there was irrefutable evidence that, as far as the perpetrators of this heinous crime is concerned. And overall, the situation, if you've been hearing Javed Saab also, he's of the opinion that we've seen, the kind of climate overall in India at this time. There is clearly, the secular, even the image of secular India is now slowly fading. We don't see, perhaps when Congress was there, like Javed Saab said, perhaps there was that facade. Now, there seems to be just, across the board, we are seeing statements like this, that of course, if these minorities, if they want to exist, then they have to live like Hindus, even if we talk about Muslims particularly. How would you analyze the situation?
Basically, as far as the incident of Sumatra is main incident is, it is, and what as it was decided was, I would say, the vestry of justice, mockery, and sham. There were public confessions, and still they were ignored. And so far, the victims from Pakistan, about 44, they are still asking for justice, but it is not there. Now you have spoken about the secular image of India. I have lived twice in India. India was slightly better, I would say, in 80s when I first had my posting over there. But over the years, it has deteriorated to the point of no return.
Right.
To expect from Modi, which is driven by Hindutva, something sane, something akin to rule of law, quality or secularity, is, I think, living in a fool's paradise. And it would be a stupid thing to think that India would ever live up to the image of secularism in reality. Its leadership openly and publicly have been asking for something which is akin to genocide, akin to, I would say, hatred and ethnic cleansing. Because of its size, because of its marketability and markets and international image, which is on the decline, still it is substantially strong. It's still surviving, and the international opinion has not gone to the level which can be seen as a threat to Modi. Modi
Right.
is not going to change, and the leadership is not going to change, and the impact is that the violence continues. The new incident like innocent job incident, or it has been played, and how Muslims and other communities have been slaughtered, burned, and brutalized. Uh, not enough to awake the world conscious is something which is, I would say, a reminder of the rule of jungle, law of jungle, which is a terrible thing.
Salma. So, Dr.
But
Salma,
still,
overall, as far as, I mean, of course, what Ambassador Saab is saying, what Javed Jadoon Saab is saying, of course, there are no two opinions about what's happening in India at this time. But as far as politics is concerned overall, of course, we've also seen, the Modi government use it to their benefit, because, of course, it's the second time that he's in power. And now, in terms of channeling the Hindu extremist vote, the vote bank there, that also has worked for them.
Yeah, sorry, I missed the last point, Marukh.
As far as using their vote bank is concerned, the extremist Hindutva movement has picked up. We've seen them. It worked well, of course, for the Modi government. They've been able to use that vote bank. They've been able to use that extremism to their advantage.
Absolutely.
Coming back, Ji.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, and I totally agree with both my previous eminent speakers. You see, there has always been this notion about India that it was a secular state
Right.
with deeply ingrained secular tendencies. But unfortunately, where I look at India is that most of the secularism that we see, especially the political expression of secularism, especially in the high politics, was primarily for vote consumption and for international audience. Because at the time of India's inception, the term of secularism had a lot of political appeal and international praise and appreciation came to India for being inclusive and the ahimsa and non-violence and so many other things that went with the Gandhian notion of non-violence and statehood really worked well when it came to secularism. But at the cost of sounding not too cynical, I would also say that yes, over the decades, people in India started to believe in it, and secularism by itself became a very strong notion and a theory. Which everyone abides by. I mean, at one end of the prism, we place Nelson Mandela for his non-violent actions, and then there's also the Gandhian notion to it. But then we see in these last 8+ years how this entire aspect has been undone. I mean, the facade that Javed Jadoon Saab talks about of secularism is actually a right word to say because the Babri Mosque incident, the first very high end expression of anti Muslim fervor and extremism, started not in the BJP government's time. It happened at the peak of Congress rule. And Rajiv Gandhi and others did not do anything to kind of undo it or tell people not to indulge in such anti-secular activities. Rather, they gave them a tacit go ahead. And
And also
even before that, when we
in
look at
terms of the
Indira
image
Gandhi's rule,
that India wants to send out into the world, it's always about secular India, to promote their tourism, to promote their own industry, to promote their economy also. We've always, India
yeah.
has been trying, of course, now Modi has been fooling the world. And that facade, do you feel that that facade is wearing off? Because now, all over the world, we saw what happened as far as the hijab ban was concerned also.
Yeah, you see, Maru, I mean, India, time is in India's favor, I would actually say, because so long as the secularism had its appeal, the political appeal, the social appeal, and the economic appeal that you talk about, in today's world, non-secular tendencies, ultranationalism is selling, and it's selling pretty well. And this age of depression, economic depression, countries who have money, countries who have become not inclusive but very self-centric, are in, and they are the expression of the day, and that makes things pretty good for India because they can actually do whatever they want to do with impunity and get away with it. And that is what is actually helping Modi and his brigade. Just imagine, I mean, Swami Asim Anand, who did the Samjhota Express blast and then the Makkah Masjid blast in Hyderabad, Dakkan, and then the Ajmer Sharif blast, he is very simply acquitted of all the things that he did, despite every evidence that there was, and just flip the coin and do that for Pakistan. And imagine the type of negative press Pakistan would be garnering if we had done such a similar act with any madcap extremist who had done three terrorist incidents, very, very proudly claimed that and promising to do a lot more. But because the Indian money is attracting international audience, and people want this type of money, and they want the Indian clout to prevail in this area, so everything is being overlooked. So yes, secularism is wearing off, but ultranationalism is also helping India to get away with any of the crimes that it is conducting.
Right, let me come back to you. Ji, Javed Sahab, I think what Dr. Salma and Ambassador Sahab is also saying is very relevant, as far as the image of India is concerned. And of course, we've talked about this before also, but overall, as far as, the clout India has in the international community, the fact that, of course, it's a huge economy, the fact that, of course, for the West, for them, it's beneficial to have India. In terms of the geostrategic position, as far as India is concerned, as far as Pakistan, China is concerned, all of those things, it suits them to have India in their pocket, so to speak. But how long do you think it's going to be that they continue to look in the other direction?
I think so long Pakistan doesn't sort of assert its position, I think we have the advantage as well. If you talk about India's economic market or the kind of population they offer to the international community, and particularly the major international powers which look towards Indian market with greed, and they would like to sell their weapons, and they would like to sell their other products to India. But unfortunately, Pakistan is located at a very strategic position. And I think we have not been able to use our particular strategic advantage we had. For example, we did a favor to USA to cut loose and run from Afghanistan for free. Because Americans, without Pakistan's assistance and facilitation, couldn't have spoken with the Taliban leadership. We provided them the opportunity to sit on a negotiating table in Doha, and even the Murray rounds were conducted, and Pakistan became the most important facilitator and a key player as far as the deal was concerned. I think otherwise it wouldn't have been possible. At the end of the day, what really happens is Americans cut loose, run from the region, and Pakistan is left high and dry. What did we get out of it? As the Americans say, whenever there is some kind of negotiations, they always say, what is in it for me? What was in it for Pakistan? Except that America continues to look towards India as a strategic partner. India is part of the Quad. India is part of the greater game in this Asia-Pacific region. And the game is to contain China. And China is Pakistan's only trustworthy ally. And Pakistan really can't afford to lose the kind of momentum which China has right now. If China is in trouble, of course, its kind of focus would be diverted towards the region. Malacca Strait, we know that is a very narrow strait. The only waterway which China gets to have trade with the rest of the world is Malacca Strait. And if there is some kind of a blockade with the help of India, Australia, and other countries which are a part and parcel of the American great game, I think there lies the problem, that we have not been able to use our strategic location. We have not been able to assert our our power, which is our location in this particular region. While on the contrary, Marukh, India has been able to sell its importance. They have been able to sell their market. Why should we expect that the Americans would not look towards India as an important market, important player in this particular region? Because now India is willing to become part of the American game to go for the Chinese containment as well.
Let me come back to you, Ji. We also have with us Lieutenant General retired Nadeem Khalid Lodi. Ji, Naeem Khalid Lodi Sahab, overall, we've been talking about the Samjhauta Express. I hope that you've been listening. We've also been talking about the fact that India has done what it, as far as their extremist movement is concerned, as far as the image overall of India being a secular India has certainly taken a beating. But the world doesn't seem to react, we don't see the kind of reaction. Of course, the geostrategic position as far as India is concerned, all of those considerations, them being the kind of economic market, economy that suits them, all of those things. But General Sahab, overall, do you think it's also, as far as Javed Sahab was also saying, it has to do with the fact that we have to use our own geostrategic position to our advantage? We also have to be able to assert ourselves. Do you think that we are doing it enough?
I think whatever Javed Sahab was saying, I listened to that. He was on dot. That is a great factor, I would say, in all that which is happening, not to our advantage. But then that is not the only factor. The others, you have mentioned yourself that this world is not a level playing field, and other countries act according to their own interests, and they have a lot of interest in India, and we know about that. But I now see a change. I mean, very recently we are watching that the world has now become a bit sensitized whatever is happening inside main Indian land, and especially after this veil or parda
Ji, the
imbroglio,
hijab issue. Ji.
hijab thing. You must have heard that even some of the Gulf states they have shown their annoyance, and they have openly talked about it. There are voices coming from Washington, from London, the important two countries. But we have to, do three things. One is that we must propagate all these things to the best of our ability, and propagate it not to the governments but to the civil societies of the world. Because they in turn will put pressure on their governments, and then something will happen. Otherwise, governments are blind; they just go for their interests and nothing else. And secondly,
So, in terms
the
of
way
putting
Javed Saab was.
pressure, in terms of putting pressure on governments are concerned, how do you rate what we've done so far? What are some of the measures you feel that Pakistan government can take? As a country we can take. Also, with regard to the Samjhota Express incident, of
Right.
course, these were our people who lost their lives, and our government feels very strongly about it. The Prime Minister even tweeted on it today. There is of course across the board we feel for what happened, which was a tragic loss for Pakistan. It's a tragedy for us even today, 15 years after the incident has happened.
True. As we all know that according to their own initial investigation, they found that some of the extremists and terrorists, they were responsible, and they were even sent to jail. But then later on, because of their system, they got bail and they were out. And we also sensed that the state was behind their, this freedom and all that. So that is beside the. This question is very important that you have asked, that why, what should we be doing? I think whenever we have this complaint that world is not listening to us, I always pose a counter question: are we speaking to the world? I mean, your channel is the only one which speaks in a language that the world understands. We have no English channels, we have no Arabic channels, we have no Chinese channels. So other countries, those who really want their voices to be heard, they do propagate their things in the language that the world understands. That is very important. And secondly, media, not only mainstream media, even social media is very important. So we need to have proper organized social media, things, so that the things can be spread. Then, besides diplomacy and media, we also need to act in the field of lawfare, which I think we have seen very little, movement in that. So there's a lot that we can do in fields. We need to understand the nature of wars, or the nature of conflicts. Nowadays, it is no more the clash of tanks and guns. It is all about perception management. It is all about media. It is all about economy. It is all about politics. So we need to get some expertise in that. And let me reiterate what Javed Saab was saying, that we need to show our resolve. We need to assert ourselves. Only then the world will listen to. World only listens to two qualities. Either you should be able to give some benefit to somebody, or you
Right,
should be
let me
able
come
to.
back to you, General Saab. I'll come back to you. I'm going to go to Mia Sanaullah ji. Ambassador Saab, you've been hearing the conversation so far. I want to come to, that's what I've wanted the input from General Naeem Lodi also on this, that as far as what we can do as far as raising this issue is concerned. Not just the Samjhota Express issue, but overall what's happening as far as minorities are concerned, overall the treatment of Muslims in India at this time. What are some of the measures you feel in your experience that we can take? Of course, social media, having an organized social media setup, the kind of diplomacy that is needed all over the world, the kind of, we need that kind of agitation to bring the issue to the fore, to keep it constant, are some of the things that General Saab has been talking about. What can you add to this as far as measures that we as a country can take, as a nation can take?
The hard reality is that Pakistan is not in a position to do much. People talk too much about the strategic location of Pakistan and its advantage. In the current geostrategic position, geoeconomic position, and when we look at it, we find that even on Afghanistan issue, less people attend the summit, foreign ministers meeting here, and most go over to India. That is the kind of the situation we have to face. The issue is that we have to look within ourselves. If we present a model, if we continue to be consistent in our stance, then people would listen. If we have been begging India for a dialogue and continued dialogue, that is a part of diplomatic talk. But you do not leave the core issue. You have to focus on things where India has really faulted. And this incident, Samjhauta incident, you see what happened afterward. We continue to have a normal relationship with India. Normal in the sense that you have been trying to overdo in order to reach out to India. India is not going to listen to you. The world is not going to listen to you. Whatever you may do and say and arrange in Pakistan, the kind of events and everything, because India has been able to give, as the General Lodi Saab has said, has been able to entrust the world power, superpowers. We are lucky that we have China on our side. Otherwise, within the region, who are there? Who is going to support really? Who are backing up your stance against India? Everybody is having a neutral kind of policies. We have to be very consistent.
Do you think in the larger scheme of things, in the way that the world politics is structured, do you think it's realistic for us to expect the kind of support that we have from China, that kind of support from elsewhere?
No, China is, as I said, we are fortunate. China is with us, and it is a trusted, time-tested relationship, and it is based on mutuality of interest. No, beyond it, there are other nations too. We have to continue work not only through social media, social other things, events, but also in our dialogue. And we should, if there is no, recently I have seen too many articles asking for resumption of status, that we have no other option but to talk to each other. And I have lived twice in India. Even if you go over to them in New Delhi, even if there is a meeting between the two prime ministers, nothing would happen beyond some statements. You have to think twice. What is your going to be strategy? You want geopolitics, a mix of the two? Are you just lower hanging fruits? What kind of fruits are there with regard to India? You can basket.
Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Dr. Salma. Dr. Salma, what's your take on what Ambassador Saab is saying? He's saying that, in terms of social media, of course, that's one of the things that was talked about. But other than that, our relationship with other nations, our constant dialogue with them, our dialogue with India, he's of the opinion that, when we do have a dialogue with them, there's really no, I mean, of course, we've seen the kind of reaction that comes from across the border. I don't think there are two opinions on that. But in terms of dialogue with other nations, other countries, talking to them about what's happening as far as India is concerned, engaging them. What's your take on this?
You see, Marukh, the problem here is, I think number one, it's the power of narrative that Pakistan and also the style of narrative that Pakistan needs to adopt. Um, and how much relevant Pakistan is in the international politics that makes the situation work in our favor. And another thing that was mentioned here, and I would support that, is the fact that Pakistan's narrative remains constant, stable, and sustainable. There's a lot of shifting goals that Pakistan keeps doing from time to time, which we need to avoid. We need to remain very consistent in our statements and our stance. From the diplomatic jargon, there is an aspect that say that when you're negotiating with your adversary or anyone, keep all options open, but don't put them on the table at the very onset, so that you give so much of leeway to your adversaries or to your negotiating partners that you end up losing the bargain in that entire stride. But for Pakistan, especially when we are dialoguing with our partners, one thing that we really need to work very hard upon is that we need to speak with people from a position of strength. So long as we are not strong in the international community, and the strength would come from our economics, the strength would come from a strong Pakistan which does not have fissures that people can explore and exploit. When we talk about how the Muslims, which are technically not a minority in India, they are the second biggest population group. Minorities are something which are in single digits or double digits, but here the Muslims of India are in a very, very huge number. But the way India is going about doing what it is doing at the institutional structural level, the Muslims would be reduced to a minority. But when we talk about these things, unfortunately, there are certain glaring fissures within Pakistan as well, where the minority, where we don't score very well on the minority rights. So we really have to strengthen our home front to a point that no one can pinpoint fingers at us, and no one can do that those things. However, when we are talking to our allies and to our partners as well as our good friends of today and yesterday, I think the only thing that is going to make our talk credible and our stance credible is the strong footing that Pakistan can stand on and talk to them about. Otherwise, unfortunately, there's no one who's going to take us very seriously. And the very
Let me
fact
come
that
back to you.
India has
General Saab,
managed to
what
score,
Dr. Salma is saying, of course, is
sorry, just
important.
one minute, managed to
Ji.
score in UAE and Muslim world rather than Pakistan is the fact that India has invested a lot on the economic front in those places, and it has lobbyists and narrators who are doing an incredible job for India on its behalf. Thank you.
Right. Let me come back to you. Please stay with us. Ji, General Saab, what Dr. Salma is saying as far as India's, lobbying efforts is concerned, their diplomatic efforts are concerned, their engagement in terms of putting forward their narrative is concerned, all of those things are of course there. But in terms of when we talk about economic situation, we talk about our economy, these are of course long-term goals. We've also seen the Indian economy suffer at the hands of Modi's leadership. We've seen recently, what happened as far as COVID is concerned, the way that they handled that, all of those things. But in spite of that, of course, they are a very different economy. They are a much stronger economy than Pakistan is. In terms of going towards those goals which are long term, certainly we hope that we will be stronger. We hope that we will have a better economy. We hope all of those things. But in terms of building our narrative, our diplomatic efforts are concerned. Our lobbying efforts are concerned. Those can certainly pick up, right?
True. The thing is that there's no doubt. This is a correct thing to say that we have certain weaknesses, and some weaknesses we have created with the passage of time. But we also need to review our strengths. So whenever you see the setting of the world as far as international politics is concerned, that is nearly constant. We know who is who and what are they doing. One, of course, we must concentrate on making ourselves strong. That is okay. But then you have to play with the hand that you have. You can't say, as I'm sorry, as Excellency Ambassador Saab was saying, that Pakistan can do nothing. And then he was also saying that we should do this and this, which means that Pakistan can do a lot. So, in my humble opinion, if you are a country of 220 million people, if you are a nuclear country, if you can grow your own food, if you have such potentials within you, and even then, if you cannot assert yourself, there's something wrong with our policies also. So, whereas I do agree with this, that as far as the elements, the national elements are concerned, we need to develop them. We need to improve our power potential and convert it into a power, let it not lie as a potential. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that till that time we do nothing. Because I do not agree with this idea that first you acquire, good economic stature, and then who is going to allow you that? As long as you are weak, you are speaking weak, you are acting weak. So I would say that whatever potential you have, make full advantage, make full use of that, and that can be done. I can see a lot of space. So the first thing is that start talking strong at least. There have been countries, those who were isolated and alone, like Cuba. They went through things. Just look at Iran, what they are going through, and some very rich countries like Libya, like Iraq, like Nigeria. They faced circumstances much worse than ours. So I do not buy this idea that we can do nothing and we have done everything, whatever was in our power. No, we can do a lot even under the prevailing circumstances, although we may need to improve our own circumstances also.
Right, Ji Javed Sahab.
But Marukh, I'm surprised that why we are so shy of accepting Pakistan's importance. A country of over 200 million people, the only nuclear Muslim state in the world, and with a very important strategic location. If it is not important, then why all the Western countries came running to Pakistan when the Soviets marched into Afghanistan? And Pakistan became the bulwark against communism. And Pakistan was the only country. It became the most allied ally of the Western world. When there was a dictator, General Zia, he was among the most disliked leaders in the world. Then all of a sudden he became darling of the West. And then comes, fast forward to 9/11. It was only because of Pakistan's strategic location that a military dictator, not even accepted by any foreign country for a visit, becomes the darling of the West. Why? Because of the strategic location. And I think why we shy away from accepting that Pakistan is an important player in the world. Pakistan is a nuclear state. Pakistan has a young population, more than 65, I think, percent of the population, young population. Very talented people of Pakistan, and I think saying that Pakistan can't do anything, well, I think this is a defeatist mentality. Pakistan can do a lot. We need some kind of a direction. If you have the direction, if you have the very determined leadership, and adding Pakistan's military armed forces, one of the best in the world. What are we lacking? What we are lacking is the dedication, the commitment, and the vision, and the commitment with the people in the country. Nothing else. I don't believe that Pakistan is not an important player in the world.
No, but do you think that it's also about consistency? Do you think that, we have over time, consistency is needed as far as our diplomatic efforts are concerned, as far as our lobbying is concerned?
That is why, Marukh, that is why I said direction. Because in foreign policy, you need to have a very, very clear-cut foreign policy. And foreign policy must be a focused foreign policy. Of course, we know that it is economy right now. Economic diplomacy is probably taking the front seat. But that doesn't mean that, leadership in every government, every political party, they have been definitely striving to take Pakistan to a position of strength and a position where Pakistan can have a bargaining chip. And I think we lost that opportunity when we negotiated peace in Afghanistan, and we just gave away everything for a free.
But Javed Sahab, don't you think that overall, as far as all political parties, whether across the board political parties, as far as the agenda of Kashmir is concerned, for example, as far as India is concerned, do you think that, they've been lacking because we've had successive change of governments, of course, which is normal in any country. But don't you feel that as far as the Pakistan's patriotism is concerned, our agenda as a nation is concerned, it's always reigned supreme, as in, you know, as far as our relationship with India, of course, it has
and
had
the Kashmir,
its ups and
the
downs.
core
And
issue of Kashmir
also,
is concerned, yes, absolutely.
you know, whenever we want, you know, as far as Kashmir is concerned, we have, you know, all the parties unite as far as on the issue of Kashmir.
I
We've
think
seen
all
that.
the political parties and the people of Pakistan are united as far as Kashmir is concerned.
But also
And
as far as
every political party and the people of Pakistan are united as far as India's threat perception is concerned. I think every Pakistani and every political party believes that Pakistan has a destiny. And if it is a manifest destiny, that Pakistan will remain a very powerful player in the region.
Right.
Of course, we have right now economic problems. We can overcome these problems, and one day Pakistan will be out of woods. And I strongly believe that we must have kind of a confidence over the talented people, our armed forces, our nuclear capability, and our strategic location. I
Right.
think that is the way forward.
Ji, General Sahab. General Sahab, can you hear me? I think there's a problem with audio. Ji, Dr. Salma, you know, as far as our strategic importance is concerned, what I was asking Javed Sahab just now is basically as far as our political parties are concerned, across the board, we do have one stance as far as the importance of Pakistan is concerned, you know, as far as our policy, foreign policy is concerned. Of course, there have been changes, but consistency in terms of what Kashmir has to, you know, what it means for us as Pakistanis, and, you know, the minorities, the protection of minorities in India, overall the situation, the plight of minorities in India, of course, that remains largely, you know, it's the same across the board as far as all political parties are concerned, whether change of governments, you know, whatever government there may be. Dr. Salma,
I mean, can you hear me? Yeah, there is no divergence when it comes to the main aspects. I would just use this example, especially with regards when Pakistan was building its nuclear weapons potential, and it started in a democratic time frame, and then the military rule came over, and then 10 years later, again there was a transition to democracy, but the commitment to going nuclear remained as strong as day one. And each and every regime that came, however different the flavor of that regime was, the commitment and the stance was exactly the same. And that is how it is on several other issues as well. And there is no two opinions to that. However, one point that I would like to reiterate here is that the relevance of a country is definitely a very, very important point. But the relevance also needs to be a positive relevance and a sustained relevance. What we are seeing over the decades is that Pakistan has been used, and Pakistan provides an excellent opportunity, a pivotal space to many great powers of the world who want to score their riches. And then Pakistan pays a very heavy price for its cooperation, for being pivotal, and then it is kind of left high and dry once they're used. Perhaps Pakistan needs to learn better bargaining skills, if that may be the case, or Pakistan needs to really understand how important it is in this global chess game that we should actually bargain for a lot more than otherwise. And the example here is very simple, where India, when it entered into the strategic partnership with America, has to date not agreed to several of the strategic partnership principles that the USA outlined for them, and that leaves the US administration is extremely frustrated. But India keeps on doing its typical head nod, left, right, up and down, without being committed about anything, and getting a lot as a result of that bargaining stance. So Pakistan needs to be, I think, a lot more clever and a little less empathetic and a little less giving in its capacity. We are a very generous people. And when it comes to any of the greater powers who try to come and curry favors from us, we give Virtually
To
everything.
perhaps
I
be
mean,
more circumspect. Thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you for being with us, Javed Jadoon Saab, Mia Sanaullah Saab. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Salma Malik. Thank you for being with us, General Naeem Khalid Lodi. Thank you for joining us. As far as the issue of Samjhota, as far as the incident, very traumatic, very brutal incident that killed so many of our Pakistanis is concerned. Of course, it's been 15 years and we haven't seen justice being meted out to the victims of these families. Of course, we continue to agitate this. Let's hope that there will be justice. Let's hope that the world will see India for its extremist activities, for its Hindutva movement, for its extremism that is perpetrating all over the world. Certainly, its image has taken a damping all over the world. We certainly hope that there will be more exposure in terms of the kind of brutality that is now in place under the Modi regime. Let's hope for all of that. Thank you so much for joining us today on First Look.